Good morning, world.
And good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in on this Friday for Michael Patrick. He'll be back with you on Monday. In fact, he'll be back with us later on this morning as he'll be guesting on his own show, although the lines have to be very clearly drawn between guest and host. And I will delineate those for Michael Patrick, and then he'll say you can't come back anymore. So at any rate, we wish you a good morning here. It's January the 28th, and the weather feels like it's January 28th as we're at least here in Lansing, a few blocks from the state capitol, in the high teens and a little snow flurry out there, and it's just damp and winter-like. Another month or so ought to take care of that as we'll start to thaw and get ready for the baseball season. Gary Austin standing by in the newsroom this morning. Gary, the thing that strikes me this morning that I spent some time reflecting on is that this is the 25th anniversary of the Challenger disaster, and I think everybody who was alive at the time remembers where they were when that happened.
It is 25 years ago. I remember I was in a newsroom.
Me too.
And just outside of Washington, D.C. I was working in Fredericksburg, Virginia at the time. And it was staggering when that happened. I know it caught us all by surprise. And at first, it's one of these things, sort of like 9/11. When it happens, it's so surreal. It's like, wait a minute, this can't really be happening. And then when reality sets in, it's really disturbing, and it has been ever since.
Has been, in fact, and this was the famous space shuttle launch of the school teacher in space, Krista McAuliffe.
Yeah.
She lost her life, as did all seven of the astronauts. The crew was pilot Michael J. Smith, Commander Francis Scobie, mission specialist Ronald McNair, specialist Ellison Onizuka, payload specialist, as we mentioned, Krista McAuliffe, along with Gregory Jarvis, and mission specialist Judith Resnick, all perished in the Challenger disaster. And it's like virtually any other disaster. When they investigated, when they looked into what had happened, it was so simple. They simply had launched the space shuttle when it was too cold to launch the space shuttle. There had been some warnings that really it's not safe to send this thing up when it's under, I think it was 50 or 52 degrees, and at launch time I believe the temperature was 37 or 38 degrees, and the one of the shuttle components known as an O-ring, which kept the solid rocket boosters, the component parts of the solid rocket booster together, they failed in the cold temperatures. They lost their elasticity, enabling gas to escape, and that caused the explosion. Once they figured it out, it was simple. But boy, at the time, these launches had become so routine, they felt it was perfectly safe. Well, always some risks, not perfectly safe, but safe enough to send a civilian, in this case a school teacher, up into space, and it turned out oh so badly.
Yeah, you think of all the high-tech gadgetry and all the stuff that goes into pulling this off, and it's amazing when you think of all that has to come together, all of the terrific minds that have to put all the pieces together to make this happen, and thankfully, ever since we haven't had anything like that, of course, that terrible event. But those at NASA are very, very careful about that sort of thing now, and it's one of those unfortunate tragedies that we hope and pray never happens again.
And we find ourselves, I think there are only 2 shuttle launches left before they retire the fleet of space shuttles.
Yeah,
I believe the last one's in April.
Yeah, where we go from here,
yeah,
hard to tell, but
right.
I know a lot of folks in NASA now are waiting to see what the future holds for them. And I think a lot of people who deal with budgetary issues with the federal government are hanging onto their hats too. Get a load of these latest stats, Rich. Did you hear $1.5 trillion? That's our debt now. That's the direction we're heading. And right now, this is staggering. This ought to make anybody stop and think. How in the world did we get in this mess? 40 cents out of every dollar, 40 cents out of every dollar the federal government spends is borrowed today.
From China.
How in the world can you sustain that?
Well, you can't.
You
you can't.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. While you cut spending or raise taxes or some combination thereof. The report from the Congressional Budget Office, which came out yesterday, which contained the numbers you referenced, the $1.5 trillion deficit, said the leading contributor to the deficit would be the Bush-era tax cuts, which were just renewed for another 2 years.
Yeah, it's hard. 40 cents out of every dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we do? But then on the flip side, Rich, you just can't keep raising taxes. I think there's got to be a fine line, and I think that's what those in Congress are looking at right now. You keep raising that tax rate, and job providers are going to say, hold on a second here. If I've got to pay so much more to foot this tax bill, money that I could be spending to expand my business, to hire on more employees. I'm not going to do it because the uncertainty of the federal government taxing me every time I turn around.
Well,
And
Gary,
business providers, they're thinking that. So I mean, you see what I'm saying?
I-
It's a
I-
double-edged sword.
I
But you've
do.
got to get the money from somewhere. So what do you do?
Well, Gary, when they cut taxes in early 2000, we promptly went out and lost 8 million jobs. When was the when was the country more prosperous than it was back in the 1950s? We were booming. We had a huge middle class, and the top marginal tax rate under Dwight D. Eisenhower was 91%.
But it's true, yeah.
Once you started making $3 million in 1950s dollars, you paid 90% in taxes on every dollar over that $3 million mark. Okay, and now Warren Buffett will point out that he pays a lower marginal tax rate than his secretary does, and he says that's insane. The country actually did better, when because one of the incentives, people didn't want to give that money to the government, so they would turn around and pour the money back into their businesses. So at any rate, but that's the other side of the argument. But that's the one I always go back to. The country was never stronger than it was back in the 1950s when one person. Go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, but then at that point, the federal government wasn't nearly as big in the 1950s as it is today, and something has to funnel money into the system. Where some would argue the federal government has gotten so big, no longer can the taxpayer at any tax rate at 1.5 trillion possibly sustain that.
Well, we spend an awful lot of money on the military, don't we? I believe we spend more than the next largest 3 or 4 countries combined.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that's sacrosanct. Nobody ever wants to cut military spending. And
and no one ever wants to cut their program that they think is the most important. That's the problem.
Yeah, but you go back and again, I'll reference Dwight Eisenhower in that famous speech he made leaving office, where he said that every dollar that we spend on a battleship represents money that's not spent somewhere else to provide health care for somebody, or clothing or shelter. These
but
these
you know
sorts
what?
of things.
But national security is important, and Eisenhower did
Well,
talk about
I
the
would think-
military-industrial complex. That was his thing.
Sure, I would think that if anybody knew of the importance of national defense, it would be Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Well, it's a tough decision our friends in Washington have to make. I mean, we have dwindling resources, very little funds to work with, and a lot of important programs that need to be paid for. But you just got to figure, at 40 cents out of every dollar being borrowed, I mean, that alone, Congress is going to take a good hard look at that and figure it's not sustainable. So what do? It's a tough decision. I think it's going to be a balance, Rich. I think you would agree. I mean, perhaps some revenue issues have to be explored, but then you have Republicans saying, we've got to make some deep cuts in a wide array of programs. Democrats say, hold on a second here, you can't cut too deep because so many rely on these programs. I mean, it's a tough decision. I'll tell you this, it's a decision I'm glad I don't have to make because they have a big job ahead.
Well, there's no question about that. And at any rate, there's this situation in West Michigan, the disappearance of the woman in Paw Paw. We're going to get the official word here shortly, but it certainly looks like it's going to end tragically.
Yeah, it sure is. Sadly, blood has been found in the hunt for Amy Hensley from Van Buren County. Police found blood near a trailer in Hartford Township after some volunteer dog teams were on her trail, and in any event, where this leads from here, we don't know. Apparently, one person is being questioned about this.
A cousin of the missing woman, and there's one report also, and we'll get more details on these as they develop throughout the course of the morning. That not one but 2 bodies have been found.
Hey, what do you make of this item pricing law? What do you think of that?
Oh, you know what? I'm not up to speed on it, frankly. I'm sorry to say. I know that retailers, say it costs them more money to put a price tag on every item. Consumers say, yeah, but you want to know what something costs when you buy it. So I'm not quite sure where I fall on that.
Yeah, it really has become a big deal, and I know some businesses in Michigan, because they haven't followed the law that's in place right now, have been fined. And retailers say, this is just too expensive. I mean, if we miss a few price tags here and there, what's the big deal? I mean, you can always ask somebody, hey, clerk, excuse me, this box of whatever. I mean, what does this cost? Can't find the price tag. I mean, some would argue best to do that than to rather saddle, businesses today that are already saddled with so many other provisions. Now, on one side of the issue, the other side says, well, you got to look out for consumers, and they should know where they stand when they're buying stuff. So another one of those issues where we have two sides.
Exactly right. And again, I'm not. I guess the consumer in me likes the barcode on everything. But hey, I was just in a Kroger last week, and I'm trying to figure out what the tomatoes cost, and they're just you got no idea. So just put it in the cart, and you'll figure it out at checkout.
You know what? You're going to buy it anyway.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Go ahead,
there you
the
go.
cart.
There
now,
you go.
I like that. Hey, what's this business? Detroit and Windsor, that new bridge. It looks like everybody talk about all the old governors who were on hand for Governor Milliken. We saw John Engler.
Oh yeah,
there was Jennifer Granholm.
that definitely looks like it's going to happen, and
Jim
that'll.
Blanchard, they say it's got to be done. So we'll see.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Gary, nice chatting with you, and a lot of problems out there to talk about. No question about that. Let's get some financial advice, so we will do that as we continue. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on Friday morning, and we'll be back in just a moment. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on this Friday morning. The big story right now in the world is the situation in Egypt, where the rioting has been going on all week long, and it is getting worse. How much worse, we can't tell you exactly right now. The internet in Egypt has been shut down, and it's a news blackout essentially has been imposed, and it's a little bit frustrating. For example, when I go to CNN.com, I can't find a story which is datelined any more recently than 11 o'clock last night. The Associated Press last night posted on YouTube a video of a protester being shot during the riots, but again, the details are hard to come by. Fred Hollis, the radio and television division manager and producer director for RBC Ministries, has just returned from Egypt. He was there with a group producing a documentary, a group from Grand Rapids. He's on the other end of our line right now. And Mr. Hollis, what can you tell us about what you saw firsthand in Egypt?
Well, my heart goes out to the people of Egypt because I spent just 2 days there, but I made many friends. And as a documentary producer, I had to have a lot of accompaniment because it is a high-control kind of government, which I worked in several countries, and it was not surprising. And I was prepared for that in Egypt. So I traveled with a policeman, with a press representative, besides my driver and the fellow that the tourist, a fellow that handled all my land arrangements. And these people had to be with me whenever I was not in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And I gained their trust quickly because I was there to do a documentary that involved locations that were there in 1916, so I'm going in kind of oblivious to what's beginning to emerge. And they've impounded my camera and they're not letting out of customs, and I had worked 4 months in advance, and I knew the ropes internationally of how to get this done, and I was really like, boy, what is going on? I can't get my camera out into the country. So we rent a camera and make our way through the different sites, and on the second day, we were in downtown Cairo. As we were crossing the Nile into Old Cairo, we began seeing a lot of police and military moving in, and they were moving in quickly, aggressively, with a strong face. And I could just see the hearts of the Egyptians I was with sink because it was a holiday. Tuesday was a holiday when all this started. It was a holiday actually to celebrate the police of Egypt and some of the noble things they had done in the transition of British rule to Egyptian independence. So, it was a day when families were off and doing things, and yet this was happening. As we approached the inner city, a group of the military stopped us and said, all foreigners, all tourists, all press have been evacuated from the heart of the city, and you need to turn around. We were already 3/4 across the way of the bridge because traffic is pretty brutal in Cairo. We had to go across the bridge, drive along the Nile to find another bridge, to go back out of the city. It was at that point that, I crossed like the British Embassy, and there was a military all over the face of that embassy, and I thought, wow, they're really really getting ready for something serious here. And as I began to ask questions, this had been anticipated for some time, all these events. And in the distance on one of the bridges we were approaching, I had seen coming in a large demonstration. They began making their way down the street. I was log jammed on, and they crossed us. And the thing I noticed as the 300 or 400 protesters moved around our bus, and we're not a large bus, only about 6 of us in there, but a good-sized one, and as they're pounding on the bus and making noise and screaming, I'm noticing, wow, this is the next generation. These are all 20-somethings.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on cell phones, and they're, all interconnected, and they want a better future. They want a better country. They want something else than they have.
What is it that they do have right now? What are the primary problems as you observed?
The number one thing that I observed is that there's such high control on everything. It's not a mean control. It's just kind of been there forever,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you can make too much out of it. The day before I shot, I spent the whole day just going through different levels of government for permits. I spent like 8-9 hours doing that. Different offices. Every office was 2 hours to get someone's signature. And that only allowed me then to go to the site to pay the fee to then shoot. And my other half of my team was in the airport trying to get my camera out, which was obviously never going to happen. I kind of now think they were just trying to begin to control the press at that point for us. And but the people that began and knew us that were Egyptian, they were endeared to us. They were supporting us. They helped us run another camera and to get our location work done.
How did they feel about what was happening?
Sad,
Mm-hmm.
pretty sad, because I got to know them. They all had kids. They had families.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like you and I, wanting to do what we have, wanting what we have. And I think in a world where you've got a younger generation, especially, so interconnected around the globe, they all know what everyone else has, and they all want the same things as you and I. And the way that Egyptian has been closed, they want it opened. Everyone, even the press guy that was with me, a wonderful young man, a 20-something guy,
Mm-hmm.
sharp. I think he's going to be important one day. And he said, I wish this experience could be different, and I want you to come back. I want my country to be part of the global community, and that said a lot. One of the neatest experiences I had that said everything was I was at the pyramids and the Sphinx, and I'd done my shooting for that. Didn't take long. And I was with the head of antiquities of the area, and he invited me to go in the Great Pyramid. And I did not need to shoot in there, nor did I have permission, but he said, why don't I take you? I'd like to show you the inside of the Great Pyramid. It's one of the, this is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Sure.
I said, let's go in and see. And I really never realized how the pyramids were one of the wonders of the ancient world till I got inside and saw the internal structure of the thing. And it was stunning, the construction of stone in that pyramid. I had just never seen anything like it, and I've been in a lot of countries. It's hard for me to have my jaw drop, and I was in there. And then he said to me, of this, what you see, this is the Egypt that I am proud of. This is the Egypt that I can identify with. And then he motioned outward, and he said, that down there breaks my heart. And that was an eye-opening moment for me to hear that. So I don't know all the things they face while I'm there 2 days, but these were people that I connected to quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and a younger generation that just my heart went out to. But it's complicated. I don't know, in all the things going on there, as I try to ask questions, everyone knows what they don't want, but they're not sure of what they do want. And all the jobs there most of the jobs there are administered by the government, most of the best jobs. And because of the massive population, the density, it felt like there were like 8 people doing one job. So imagine yourself in a world where one job is broken up 8 ways, and how you get anything done with everyone being sure they understand they're working together to get the right thing done. It just made everything difficult.
Fred Hollis, our guest from RBC Ministries, just returned earlier this week from Egypt. As you've watched the developments now that you're back home in the Grand Rapids area, what is your sense of trepidation as things continue? It seems on a daily basis to get worse, not better.
Yeah, I didn't know it was coming, and I'm kind of surprised to see how it's continuing. Because the government went all out on that first day to really make it quiet. It looked like they were going to be able to keep it to small groups, but it looks like the younger generation and the Egyptians there have begun to make the most of this opportunity. And I often heard them say that what they saw in Tunisia, they wanted to echo. I heard that said many times. And so I think they're going for it relentlessly. But again, I'm not sure they are sure what they're going to get if they achieve anything.
Your documentary is a Day of Discovery. What's it about, basically?
Well, Day of Discovery does a variety of programs. We're kind of unique on television in that we do a different kind of program. We do biographies, documentaries, docudramas, dramas, life issues. I was there doing the story of Oswald Chambers, who is author of one of the great most read devotionals of all time, My Utmost for His Highest. And he died in 1916, and still one of the best-selling devotionals in our day. So I was there to get the things that were relevant to his time, Old Cairo, obviously the pyramids and Sphinx, and some areas that he would have been in that community. And then his gravesite at the British cemetery there. So we do a variety of programs.
All right. Well, good luck with this one, and we're glad you've returned safely, and we'll keep hoping that things in Egypt get better. Don't spiral out of control. Fred, thanks very much.
I do too. Thank you.
You betcha. Fred Hollis, our guest this morning. His documentary, Day of Discovery. He is the producer and director of that series for RBC Ministries. They were in Egypt earlier this week and have returned again. The latest that we have out of Egypt news, frustratingly hard to come by this morning. The internet in that country has been shut down. There's no twittering, no social network updates going on, and in this day and age, that's often how one gets the news. The Muslim Brotherhood, an organization in Egypt, has today called for protests and marches, but again, exactly what is going on there in real time, very difficult to ascertain at this time. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick Shields this Friday morning. In fact, we'll hear from Michael Patrick a little later on in the program today. We will take a break, and we'll be back with more in just a moment. And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick this morning. It's time to talk about money. Jamie Westenbarger is a registered principal of Invest Financial and the president of Forest Hills Financial, Inc. Invest is not affiliated with Forest Hills Financial, and the opinions expressed are those of Jamie and not necessarily those of Invest. Well, Jamie, we almost, at least for part of the day, we did see a 12,000-point Dow yesterday, and at the end of the day, it closed just a few points shy of that mark. What does that landmark mean?
Yeah, we keep pushing up against it, Rich, and we pop over it for a couple minutes, but never seem to quite want to stay over there. And, a lot of times these landmarks, whether it's the Dow Jones going over 12,000 or the S&P over 1,300 or the NASDAQ over 2,800, they're a level of resistance, they're called, and really it's a lot of times it's a psychological thing, but it can spur some more growth in the market. It can spur some positive things because people are kind of reminded that, hey, we're back to 12,000, we're moving back in the right direction. And, after the year we had in 2008 or whatever, it reminds people that things are starting to look a little bit more up, and hopefully it'll continue that way.
Yeah, and it's starting to show in the auto companies. Ford is expected to announce their biggest profit later today since 2000, something on the order of $8 billion.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some great earnings that have come out, and for every, company that comes out with bad, it seems like this week there's been two that have come out with good, and it's almost like the analysts have tried to find the bad ones because they picked apart some earnings results that actually seem to come out pretty good, and then they kind of beat them up a little bit even though they came out good. A perfect example being Amazon. Amazon came out with better than expected earnings, just slightly less than expected revenue over the last year. They blew out of the park what they had done a year ago, and the stock took a 10% beating in aftermarket trading last night. So, there is definitely a lot of really good information out there, a lot of really good signs that hopefully things are starting to really turn the corner. We're not there yet, but it definitely is something to feel a little bit better about.
Well, here's something that maybe not to feel so good about. Interest rates on credit cards are hovering near record highs, according to a story I'm looking at on CNN Money. The average credit card rate right now, 14.72%. And if your credit happens to be bad enough, if you've missed a few payments, you could end up with a rate as high as, this is unbelievable, 59.9% APR. That's credit card's not the place where you want your money. It seems clear.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's it's amazing how badly somebody can be taken advantage of in a credit card. And what's interesting is in an interest rate environment where overall things are pretty low, the credit card company seems to stand out as the abnormal thing there. But it goes back to the whole thing of we're big proponents on getting rid of debt and not carrying a lot of debt and keeping yourself nimble and erasing those collars that we have on us with payments and everything else. And I think we've seen a lot where debt has been reduced. A lot of people are spending less on credit cards, and credit card companies are having to try to recoup for that and make it off of who they can.
What's the best way to get out of credit card debt? What's your advice to somebody who is struggling?
It's interesting. Not that we're a big expert on paying off debt or anything like that, but I think one of the best examples of how to do it is simply, and a lot of people are big proponents of this, but you pick your smallest one and just attack that with the ferocity that you need to get rid of it. And so if you've got $500, you pay as much as you possibly can on that $500 credit card every month, and then when that one's gone, that $10 minimum payment you had on that one can now be applied to the next one. And I think most people would be surprised at how quickly you can really start to pay some of this stuff off. An interesting exercise is to take all of the credit cards you have and add up how much the interest is and how much the payments are. And if somebody has a lot of credit cards, especially with high interest rates like you're talking about, Rich, they'd be stunned to realize, that if they just really apply it, they probably can start really paying those off a lot quicker than they think.
Sure. Well, I was looking at a statement from one of my credit cards, and it said at the minimum payment, it would take 28 years to pay the thing off. And then I got an offer from my bank saying that they would essentially loan me the money to pay that card off, and making roughly the same payment, I would pay it off in 4 years.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a good idea too if you can get a consolidation loan. And it does a couple things. One, it gives you a specific time frame that you can get that paid off.
Sure.
But
the key, of course,
so you don't have these fluctuating rates like you do on a credit card.
Right. And the key,
the way things have been the last few years, a lot of people aren't in the position from a credit wordiness standpoint to qualify for them. And in addition to that, a lot of banks just aren't doing them. Banks aren't exactly in the over-exuberant to lend category right now.
Right, and of course you can't go and take the loan out to pay off the credit card and then go run up the credit card again. You're going to be in a worse shape than you were before. Jamie, thanks for joining us, as always, on Friday morning.
Thanks, Rich. Take care.
You too. Jamie Westenbarger, a registered principal of Invest Financial and president of Forest Hills Financial Incorporated. Invest is not affiliated with Forest Hills Financial, and the opinions expressed are those of Jamie and not necessarily those of Invest. The Chevy Volt has come to Michigan. In fact, it's come here to the Lansing area. We're going to talk to the first Michigan owner of a Volt when we continue. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on Friday morning. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Friday morning. It may not be a case of having your foot on the gas all that much longer. We're about to be joined by Mark Lee, who has bought the first Chevy Volt in the state of Michigan. So if you're driving around, you see a Chevy Volt out there, you might just want to give him a wave. Hey, Mark, how you doing? And hey, Mark, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Very good. Thank you.
Great. How do you like your Volt?
It's wonderful. It's an amazing car.
It's an interesting story. Or at least struck me as interesting, how you came to be in possession of the first Volt in the state of Michigan. You're the first guy in the whole state to get one. How'd you do it?
Well, actually, at first I placed an order here in Michigan with a dealer, and the lease on my current vehicle was up last November, so I was in a bit of a need. I was borrowing people's cars, and I went online, and there were a few people discussing purchasing vehicles outside of the state that they live in because there were only a few states that the Volts were available in right away. So I decided to check into it. I called a dealer in New York who advertised that they had Volts orders available, and checked the airline flight. It was only $100 to fly one way, and I said, you know what, I need a car sooner rather than later since I was borrowing a vehicle, and decided to order it there and fly out and get it.
You found it on a chat room, right?
Well, there's a couple Volt forums out on the web, and everybody just talking about Volts and questioning what's going on, and people giving their experiences and owning them. A couple great websites to go to, and this particular dealer actually posted on there that he had Volts available.
And bang, it was a matter of just a few hours later you were there?
Well, it was more than a few hours, but yes, it still took a couple months to actually get the vehicle, but right now, sounds like Michigan here is supposed to be getting the Volts starting the end of February. Originally, GM was saying there would not be here any sooner than March, so I knew I'd be getting mine at least a month or two earlier than what I could if I waited here for Michigan Volts.
Was that part of it for you, that you wanted to be the first, or is it just that that's how it happened to work out?
I had no idea that I would be the first, and it wasn't until the Detroit Free Press contacted me the other morning and said GM had said I am the first to their knowledge. So that had nothing to do with it. It was more a desire to get a vehicle so I can stop borrowing other people's cars.
Now, what sort of range did you get? How many times did you have to recharge, for example, on your drive back from New York to Lansing?
Well, on the drive back, I didn't recharge. I left the dealership with a charge, went about 30 miles on electric. It was a very cold ride. We were in the teens the entire drive from New York back to Michigan. We didn't even hit 20, 30 degrees. So I was using the heat in the car, which does use up some of the electricity, but I went about 30 miles on electric and then went the rest of the way using the gas generator that powers the electric motor.
What do you like about the car?
It's an extremely comfortable car. It handles like a much bigger car. I think because of the extra weight of the battery that's really low in the vehicle, it actually feels like you're driving a much larger, heavier vehicle. And I like the technology. There's a lot of very cool things about it. The touch screen, and there's a couple LED screens in there, or LCD screens. Got Bluetooth connectivity, so I don't have to pull up my phone to call people. I can just tell the car to call people. And it looks sharp. It's a nice car. Not to mention it's made in Michigan.
There you go. Is the what sort of pickup does it have? 0 to 60 in what sort of thing?
It actually gets up and goes really well. But the funny thing is, when you put the pedal down, you don't necessarily feel like you're taking off because there's no engine roar. You don't hear the engine just downshifting and going.
Right.
But if you watch the speedometer, the numbers climb very rapidly. I was really kind of amazed because the first time I drove it, I thought, geez, this car has no pickup whatsoever. But I looked at the speedometer, and I was going. It was definitely picking up and going.
Does the gas pedal work the same way?
Everything absolutely works the same way. It's not like driving anything different than the car anybody else is driving out there on the road. When the gas engine kicks in, during normal drives, you don't even know when it kicks in unless you're watching the display. The engine is very quiet, so there's very little noise involved. The engine does actually rev higher in this extreme cold that we've been having in Michigan. just because some of that engine power is also being used to throw a little extra heat into the cabin.
All right. Well, Mark, congratulations on your new car. I presume you're getting plenty of comments on it.
I am. It's actually fun. I've been stopped at a couple stoplights already and asked to roll down my window, and get the thumbs up a lot. I really enjoy it. It's a beautiful car, and I'm glad it's being made here in Michigan.
There we go. Mark, again, congratulations. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much, Rich.
You betcha. Mark Lee, the owner of the first Chevy Volt here in Michigan, and he's a Lansing resident. So glad to have him on the program this morning. We will take a break. We will get an update on the situation with Amy Lee Hensley, her disappearance, and sadly her apparent murder. We will get that at the top of the hour. And for Michael Patrick, my name is Rich Kincaid, and we will be back with you at the top of the hour. Good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in this morning for Michael Patrick. It is a chilly, wintry morning right here in the state capital. Our temperature is a little bit shy, a little south of 20 degrees, and we're getting the occasional snow flurry. And, hey, what do you expect? It's January the 28th. Well, when the week began, the name Amy Hensley was not known at all, and here today, by Friday, it is known nationally, and that, in this case, is not a good thing. It's a tragic story. The woman went missing from her pawpaw home on Monday morning, and a little later on this morning, in fact, within minutes, it's expected that the Van Buren County Sheriff will announce that this has not ended at all well. Reporter Joe Garber from our new affiliate in Benton Harbor, WSJM, has, of course, been following this story closely all week long. And Joe, joining us live now, what can you tell us? What's the latest?
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Actually, she's missing from Hartford Township.
Okay.
Amy Hensley, she went missing Monday. Basically, the morning started out like any other. She took her kids to the bus, kissed her husband James goodbye. He went to work and called her at 10 a.m., but nobody was there at 10 a.m. Monday, so he went to check on her, and she wasn't there because he normally calls her around 10 a.m. He called police at 4:40 when he still couldn't find her, 4:40 in the afternoon, and police said to keep looking, and then around 10 p.m. he filed a police report because she was gone. And once that started, Tuesday we got a phone call, or we got information on it, so we spoke to James, and obviously that was a very nerve-wracking time for him because he can't find his wife, and then it pretty much exploded in the media. And there were 2 vigils this week, and unfortunately, as of this morning, they found 2 bodies over near Hartford at a cousin of James Hensley's home, and it didn't turn out good.
There's the sheriff is holding a press conference. Originally, I understand it was supposed to start about an hour ago, but that's been delayed, and it's expected. Sadly, that's when the official announcement is going to be made.
Yes, we're still waiting on that press conference.
As we understand it, there were 2 bodies found in the cousin's trailer?
That is correct. I'm not familiar with the other body, although when I was watching News 8 out of Grand Rapids, they had said that it was another person who thought it was possibly their mother who also went missing, but I don't know who that person is.
Okay, there was some word, and again, we'll have to wait for some confirmation on this, that it may have been the suspect's, the body may have been that of the suspect's girlfriend.
Yeah, I haven't heard that just yet. I just woke up this morning.
There was no, as you had mentioned, Monday morning it was just an average and a routine day. And Amy Hensley's husband, when he came home, he had to be filled with dread because his wife was missing, but her personal effects, including her purse, were still at their home.
Yeah, that's correct. As a matter of fact, the door was locked. Her purse was still there, but her shoes and coat were gone. There was also, I should mention, that a neighbor, I think, told police and another family member, this is an elderly neighbor, that they had seen a black truck pull up to that home that morning. This just came in earlier yesterday morning when they were having a press conference to say they thought she was still alive. But this black pickup truck, it appears that the suspect, who's now in custody, Junior Beebe, or BJ Junior Beebe, is BJ Beebe Jr. has a black truck like this. They showed this yesterday on his property.
So everything points to this guy.
Well, you got to be careful.
Of course.
Not guilty until proven guilty.
Sure.
But all the evidence is pointing there. It appears that there was an arrest warrant for him and that he's being jailed at the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department.
How many children did the Hensleys have, or do the Hensleys have?
They had 2 children.
Wow. So because the first thing she did on Monday morning was take her kids to the bus stop.
That's correct. They would have had the last contact with her.
Do you know how old they are?
I believe one is 8 and the other is 10 or 11.
Oh my. All right. Well.
Very, very young.
Yeah, very, very young, very, very sad. Well, Joe, thanks for giving us the update. Thanks for the latest information on this tragic story.
Rich, thank you very much.
All right, Joe Garber of our affiliate WSJM in Benton Harbor, and as we've been talking about, bodies were discovered yesterday, and Amanda Wall's been monitoring the press conference by the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department. I presume the press conference has begun, Amanda?
The press conference has begun. Amy Hensworth's body was found, along with Tanya Howarth, and they were discovered earlier this morning. They said that the cousin of Amy's husband, James, will be arraigned later today, and that both victims died of multiple gunshot wounds.
All right. I don't know what to say after you when you hear news like that. So, yeah, all right. So we'll see how it transpires, but that's the word. It's official now that Amy Hensley is dead, and so too is another woman.
Right.
So,
the girlfriend of the suspect.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Amanda, for staying on top of that for us.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll tell you what. This is why I think I like being a sportscaster more than being a newscaster. All right, so that's the official word that this disappearance, which attracted national attention this week, which began on Monday morning, has now ended officially with the death of Amy Sue Hensley, her body and that of another woman found in the trailer of the prime suspect in that case. That suspect will be arraigned later on today. The press conference, as a matter of fact, the Van Buren County Sheriff's press conference is ongoing as we speak. If there are any more developments, we will certainly pass those along to you. Hard to imagine that there would be any more details. The important facts are now known. Amy Hensley is a murder victim, and as is apparently the girlfriend of the suspect in this case. She was 30 years old, as we had been talking about with Joe a moment ago, the mother of 2. She went missing on Monday morning. She is described as having lived a quiet life, a devoted stay-at-home mom, raising her 2 sons, ages 8 and 10. She and her husband, James, are high school sweethearts, people at a Coloma diner said, according to this story by Ann Schreiber in the Grand Rapids Press. And so there you have it, all right? Tragic news today from West Michigan. We can give you an update on the situation in Egypt. The latest news crossing about 20 minutes ago from the newsroom at CNN. It had been difficult to get late information out of Egypt because last night, our time, the Egyptian government essentially shut down the internet in Egypt, and it was problematic getting news reports, Twitter feeds, anything out of Egypt. And the news this morning, and this is again is about 20 minutes old. Dateline Cairo, Egypt. Police fired tear gas into crowds on Friday as violent clashes between authorities and anti-government protesters broke out in Alexandria, Egypt. At least 1,000 protesters had gathered. The youths hurled rocks through black clouds of tear gas. crowds ran through the streets towards the city's central square. In Cairo, police stepped up their presence on the streets as the country's largest opposition bloc continued to call for protests. Vans packed with riot police patrolled Cairo before the scheduled beginning of Friday afternoon prayers. The Muslim Brotherhood, Egypt's largest opposition bloc, called for its followers to demonstrate after the weekly prayers, the first time in the latest wave of unrest, which has been going on for the bulk of this week. Hours ahead of what were expected to be massive anti-government protests. As we mentioned a few moments ago, the internet went dark in most of Egypt. Some text messaging and some cell phone service appeared to be blocked. Servers of Egypt's primary internet provider were down early Friday Cairo time, according to multiple services. Servers for the Egyptian government sites and for the U.S. Embassy in Cairo also appeared to be down, but at least one internet service provider was still working. Quoting now, "We are closely monitoring the situation and are aware that communication services, including social media, are being blocked," said U.S. State Department spokesman P.J. Crowley. "We continue to urge," he said, "Egyptian authorities to show restraint and allow for peaceful protests to occur." Now, with more protests looming, some government critics voiced their opinions on a state-run television network. A popular morning show on the state-run Egyptian satellite station included comments from guests calling for the resignation of government officials and increased dialogue between authorities and arrested protesters. So that's the latest, as near as we can ascertain, from Egypt this morning, where protests are continuing, and as further information comes in, we will make that available to you. All right, Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on Friday morning, a very sad Friday morning. Amy Hensley and another person have been found dead in West Michigan, so that story, which began to develop on Monday morning, has ended tragically here on Friday morning. We'll stand aside. We'll be back with more of MPS in the morning right after this. And indeed, we do span the globe right now as we're joined by our world correspondent, Nikki Hale. Amanda K. Wall, our producer, in studio with us here on this Friday morning. I'm Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. He'll be back on Monday. In fact, he'll be on the air with us in top of the next hour,
About
as a
an
matter
hour.
of fact. Right, so we'll look forward to that. A story here in my hand where the headline, it seems to me, doesn't match the facts, not altogether unusual, but it says, "Snub for Obamas as royal sources reveal that they will not be invited to Prince William's wedding." Then you go on and read the story, and it turns out it's not a state event.
Right.
Because Prince William isn't a head of state, and he wants to invite as many members of the public, people that have worked for the 21 charities that he works with. He wants to invite as many of those people as possible. So, A, it's not really a snub,
Nope.
and B, there's no indication at all whether or not President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, even want to go.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I read the story through as well, and it's the same impression. However, one thing you want to think of here is this is going to be the next big thing in the UK, and there are heads of state being invited. So they're looking at it from that perspective. So if they're going to bring, the president of France and his celebrity wife, why would they not bring the Obamas over? And being that England and the US are such an ally, So I think, this is my view on this is going to pick up speed, and there might be a change of guest list.
Well,
They said it's not final, and I think there's a reason why they're saying the list is not final.
Well, you know what? I mean, this is the situation where President Obama can't win. If he is not invited, they'll say, "Oh, look at the disdain and disrespect being shown to the president." If he does go, people are going to complain because it's a waste of taxpayer money. So I personally would just soon he just stay in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, really, does he need to be there? No. There's no actual political reason for him to be there.
Send
'cause
Joe
you're right.
Biden over.
No.
Whatever.
No, I don't think that would be appropriate.
Why not? He's the vice president, and he's a lot of fun at parties.
Yeah, but you don't see that. It's always the president. If you think back to Charles and Diana's wedding, it was Reagan and his wife, although he wasn't able to go.
Right.
It's always the president. It's always the prime minister or the president that goes. And I don't think if they're going to snub, as you said, I think it's either the Obamas or nobody.
Okay. Is there any other wedding-related news here 1 week since last we talked about this?
Well, no, there's just lots of little detail things going on. As Amanda was saying to me she found it very funny that there's bets going on in the UK, but bets at the UK, I mean, that every other corner in the streets in the UK, you've got betting shops.
Amanda, what are they betting on?
They're betting on if they will stay married within
Oh,
10
really?
years. There's a divorce bet that you
It's
can
an
do.
over-under.
Yeah.
And so if they'll stay married for 10 years, you can bet on that. You can bet on how long her train will be, if it will be the
Exceed
length
Diana's.
of... Yeah.
Yep.
How long was Diana's?
Long.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, but
All
it's
right.
very long.
Well, you just saw it in Grand Rapids,
I did,
right?
yeah. It's got to be at least 15 foot, I would
Okay,
say.
all
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
And then there was a couple of other really weird ones.
But can you imagine
if she'll be on time or 10 minutes late was one of them.
See, that's a good one to bet on because then you will know the result of your bet, April. But if you're betting on that they're going to be married for 10 years, less or more, you got to wait 10 years till you find
Right,
out.
right.
Unless they get divorced next year.
Correct.
And
Well,
then
it's,
you're-
no, knock on wood, let's hope that doesn't happen.
Well, you still have to wait a year.
That's
You
true.
know, so I don't know. I would.
Long-term betting right there.
They-
But yeah,
if the cabbies will strike,
yeah.
that was one of the bets
Mm-hmm.
on if there will be public transportation during the wedding ceremony.
Sure.
But it's very common in the UK. I mean, World Cup is crazy. People bet, on what team's going to win the World Cup at what score. All sporting events are bet on, especially
Sure.
horse racing. And that's huge in the UK. But you can bet on pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
if the bookie's willing to take it, they'll bring it, and then it just catches, and especially with a thing that's this popular. I mean,
well, and it sounds like it's a bit of fun as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen gambling spreading across Michigan, across the United States, with the casinos. But sports books, to bet on sports legally, you still have to be in Nevada to do that. To me, that's just not right. I mean, if I want to plunk down, a few bucks on the Super Bowl coming up next week, why not? Now, you did have a nice soccer story.
Yeah, it's a really nice story. Now it's not a premier division or a first division. I think it's like a third division soccer game.
Just some guys playing.
Yeah, if you want, with jerseys. It's
Right.
very nice. But
It was organized. Right.
There you go. There was a ref,
Yeah.
which we have hard time coming by sometimes in my league. So, they were playing a game and we had an injured player, and the team stopped play and put the ball out of bounds so they could because the ref didn't stop the game. So they got help to the injured player, and then when the other team threw the ball back in, they threw it towards the goalie, and there was a mishap, and the ball went into the goal, and they scored. So eventually the coach, acknowledging the fact that he stopped play for his injured player, let them walk down the field and score to bring the score back to where it was. So they ended up winning 2-1 as opposed to 1-0.
Yeah. So they felt good about their victory. They did
Yes.
they did the right
and
thing.
of course, the press went crazy on this coach saying, "What were you thinking? You could have won the game." And he said, "No, I wouldn't have been able to sleep. It's
Yeah.
just not the right thing to do. They let us take our injured player off the field." So
See, now that tells us as much about our current state of affairs as anything else. That when somebody does the right thing, that it's news.
yeah, exactly. If the opposite have happened, probably would have been a blind eye, right?
Yeah, exactly. You up to speed on this Charlie Sheen situation, hospitalized in Los Angeles? He's been having he's had an interesting past few weeks.
Right. This is the first time, though, that I've seen CBS actually comment on the situation, because usually they sort of said, whichever, he's
Yeah.
our highest-rated sitcom actor, highest-paid sitcom actor. And this time they actually said they have concerns about his private life, which is the first time I've seen comments. So I understand it's was severe abdominal pain.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure what's going on there, but we'll see.
Some are saying it's a hernia.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be
so-
anything, really.
Yeah. Well, there you go. What has he been up to? Why has CBS moved to comment here?
Exactly. I mean, there's obviously something underlying there, whether it's starting to affect his job. I mean, up till now, they had said he comes to work on time and he's a very good professional actor. It doesn't affect his job, so it's nothing to do with them. And now you hear this comment from them. So whether that's actually affecting his, daily work with them, I don't know.
Okay. Cat summoned for jury service.
I love this, especially
Yeah.
'cause
Who
my
don't?
husband.
Who don't love cats?
Well, I know, but my husband just got summoned to jury service.
Mine did too.
Really?
For February.
Neither of whom we should point out are cats, presumably. Yeah.
No, not according to my
There we
census
go.
form.
Right.
But a lady in Massachusetts apparently put her cat down as a pet, and they took in the census form, and they have actually. They think it's a human person, and they summoned him to jury duty. She went to the vet and said, it's a cat, and can you certify it's a cat? The vet certifies it's the cat, sends it into the, census people, sends it into the jury people, and they said, nope, sorry, still has to attend. So as of today, March 23rd, his date. And she said, if they're going to ask him if the person is guilty or not guilty, what is the kitty cat going to say?
Well, they have to ask questions before they seat the cat on the jury. But assuming the cat gets through that, okay.
I mean, I just think the judge just needs to look at this and say, okay, it's a cat. I mean, they've denied this initial request saying that it is a cat. Whether he thinks that it's somebody really trying to get out of jury duty, I don't think anybody's that desperate.
Sure. Well, my cat, I know personally our cat would not make a good juror because he would sleep through the entire proceedings.
Right,
So,
mine too.
Unless you had it at 3 o'clock in the morning, in which case he's all for it.
Right,
he's up.
exactly.
Yeah.
Any kitty cat at that point, yeah.
Yeah.
Or mine would be too busy cleaning,
Yeah, exactly.
No attention,
Yeah.
to
Well,
detail.
cats, whatever.
Right,
So
exactly.
exactly right. All right, back to entertainment news. Jimmy Buffett released from hospital.
Yes, did you see the footage on that?
I did not.
Oh,
He fell and hit his head, right?
Yeah, you can tell he completely misjudged the end of the stage
Right,
in
yeah.
Australia, and he's just walking and boom, and it was elbow and head first, apparently, lots of stitches. But he was unconscious for actually 5 to 10 minutes, which was the concern. But he went to hospital. They checked him out. He seems to be good. He had several stitches, and the interesting thing was the first person he emailed was Matt Lauer, and Matt Lauer was reading the email except for less the expletives, because apparently there are a lot of them in there.
Did he like the character in that Mark Wahlberg movie, is that Rockstar with Jennifer Aniston, where he falls off the set, and stays in the concert or stays in the game? Did Jimmy Buffett stay in the game here?
No, he was not able to, and he actually
Oh.
canceled his next couple of concerts
Yeah.
until he recovers fully, which understandable, I'm sure, if he's got a head injury.
Any word, was it deep into the concert, early?
Not sure,
Okay.
but the crowd, you could tell, immediately knew that it wasn't an intentional thing. It wasn't a,
yeah.
stunt or anything like that. You could tell it was like, shwoom, and he was gone.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
of a sudden, yeah.
Still kind of bummed, though, if it's like his first song.
Oh.
And, you've
I think they understand.
Yeah. I'm sure they do. All right. Well,
yeah.
all the news good on all the good news on your perspective of the world, Nikki. So we're glad to hear that.
Yes,
it's been a
except
bit of a
for-
rough morning.
I
here.
know. I heard that. It's very sad
Yeah.
news. Yeah. The only other thing is they're gonna get hit hard with snow again in England, and you know what? Those people are like, they can't survive. They don't know what to do when it snows that much. So.
How much snow does it take to shut them down? A couple inches?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, not much. And the thing is, it's heavy, slushy snow,
Sure,
so it's
yeah.
not the fluffy stuff sometimes we get here. So.
Like we got last night.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what-
I shoveled the driveway last night. That was easy.
Perfect. There we go. All right, Nikki, thanks. Good to see you as always.
welcome. You
All right.
too.
Nikki Hale, our world correspondent here on Friday morning. We're going to take a break. Amanda, what do we got coming up next? I've
We're
misplaced
going
my
to go
show
to the
sheet
movies
again.
with Ron
All
Van
right.
Timmer, and we're going to find out what is happening in the movie.
The Oscar nominations were announced this week, and we can talk about the King's Speech. Is that what that movie's called?
There is, and my favorite, The Social Network, was up for Best Picture.
Oh, there we go. All right, plenty to talk about as we continue here on MPS in the morning. And good morning once again, everybody. 7:40 here as we join you from just a few blocks from the state capitol in Lansing. Welcome to MPS in the morning, which Kincaid in for Michael Patrick Shields. Time to talk movies with Ron Van Timmeren of Celebration Cinemas. Boy, you know you're in Lansing when you drive down I-96 and you see that beautiful neon-lit theater off right there adjacent to the freeway. Ron, good morning. Lot to talk about this morning. New releases this weekend and the Oscar nominations coming out earlier this week.
Yeah, it's a great week to be in the movie business. The weather holds up, and a couple of Oscar nominees making it back into theaters this week, including 127 Hours, Best Picture for that. Of course, Best Actor nominee James Franco, that true story about the guy who was hiking in Utah and got trapped. He had to saw off his own arm to save his life. An awesome picture. That's back in theaters this week. And Blue Valentine with Best Actress nominee Michelle Williams. That also getting an Oscar run this week as well. And 5 of the best pictures still in theaters, including King's Speech. I heard you talking about that. That's an awesome movie.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the plot on that? What's the synopsis?
Of the King's Speech?
Yeah.
It is the true story of King George VI, and as he made his way to the crown, his brother actually was supposed to be king. He decided not to be king, instead to have a relationship with a divorced American woman. What a scandal that was in the 30s. Colin Firth's character took over the throne, and he was leading his people in the golden age of radio into World War II, but he had a stammer, and he could not speak and be the leader he wanted to be. Enter Geoffrey Rush, who is his speech coach, and Helena Bonham Carter. They help him become the man who he became historically.
And I've heard some people say that that's the favorite to win Best Picture. To me, it seems hard to say. I mean, are there more nominees for Best Picture now than there used to be? There's 10 pictures nominated.
Last year they went to the 10-picture format.
Okay.
And yeah, it definitely makes things a little more interesting. But the leader was King's Speech with 12 nominations. Certainly a serious challenge from Social Network, which won the Golden Globe, and we'll see this weekend who the Screen Actors Guild chooses as their best cast and therefore best picture. True Grit, that's a contender. Black Swan, Inception, all solid choices, and it's going to be tough to pick.
What's your favorite?
You know what? I have been all over the board on this. I've been saying most of the year that I thought Inception was my favorite movie, and Christopher Nolan not nominated for Best Director. Come on, that's one of the biggest snubs of this Oscar season.
How about this upcoming weekend at Celebration Cinemas? What's new and exciting?
Well, only 2 wide releases this week, including Sir Anthony Hopkins in the movie The Rite, which looks an awful lot like The Exorcist, based on true stories of seminary students who went to exorcism school at the Vatican. I didn't know there was an exorcism school.
I didn't either.
I don't want to go to that school.
Yeah.
Also, The Mechanic, starring Jason Statham. He, of course, action king of the box office for movies like Transporter and Crank. The Mechanic, a.k.a. The Hitman, a good R-rated action movie this weekend.
All right. And as you say, you've also got some of these Oscar-nominated films available.
Right. Fighter, Black Swan, The King's Speech, True Grit, and 127 Hours. 5 of the best pictures in theaters this weekend. The rest of them good rents on the video from the video shelf.
How's The Fighter? I haven't seen that yet. I want to.
Hey, one of the best sports movies in years, and it's more than sports, of course. It has to be a best picture. Interesting backstory on the fighter and his family. Some great performances. Melissa Leo won a Best Supporting Actress nomination. So a well-done movie about sports and more.
Yeah, see, I guess that's why I want to see it. When I hear it's a great sports movie, that's sort of that appeals to the fan in me.
Yeah, and it's definitely R-rated, so remember that. But a good date night film, too. Good relationship between Mark Wahlberg and Amy Adams in that movie, so a lot to like about The Fighter.
When people vote with their pocketbooks, of these 10 pictures nominated for Best Picture, which grossed the highest?
Close between Toy Story 3 and Inception. And, of course, Toy Story 3 nominated for Best Animated Movie as well. Inception, I think, was 3rd or 4th best of the year. Toy Story was 2nd best, so a close race for 2 big blockbusters.
They're not going to make a children's movie of the year, are they? There's no precedent for it, is there?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I think back to Beauty and the Beast in the 90s was the last time an animated film was nominated, and I'm not even sure it won. But, yeah, I doubt that Toy Story gets the Best Picture Oscar, except in the animated category.
Exactly.
For sure there.
Exactly. Okay. Well, Ron, thanks for the update, and we'll see you at the movies.
See you at the movies.
Okay, take care. Ron Van Timmeren of Celebration Cinemas joining us here on MPS in the Morning. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick today. In fact, we're going to chat with Michael Patrick a little bit later on this morning. Coming up next, however, we're going to talk a little bit of real estate. Kim LaForte will join us from Coldwell Banker, Hubble in Briarwood, and we'll find out what's going on in a maybe a picking up real estate market. We'll find out. All right, we'll continue here on MPS in the Morning right after this. And Rich Kincaid in this morning for Michael Patrick as we're right around the 20-degree mark with a little light flurry activity going on and outside our studios here on Michigan Avenue, just a few blocks from our state capitol. Kim LaForte joins us right now as she is with Coldwell banker. We're going to talk a little bit about real estate, Coldwell Banker Hubbell Briarwood, to be specific, Kim. And foreclosures in the news once again this week. There had been a slowdown in foreclosure activity. It seems to be picking up again. Government saying that there are between 11 and 12 million homes which are on the brink of being repossessed right now as we speak. That's unbelievable.
Once again, yes. Typically, things slow down a little bit, or I should say typically in the past few years, right around the holidays, as far as foreclosures and so forth. So you've got this pent-up thing coming up typically right around the first of the year. I talked with Mike Parsley in our office, the Coldwell Banker office, who specializes in foreclosures. And he was talking about the pent-up market where there's just so many people out there right now that are just, they put things off. The banks put things off. And then there was a lawsuit recently filed by district attorneys throughout different states that made these banks go back and wonder, or look through and make sure that what they were doing in each one of these foreclosures was actually legal.
Right.
And so that put everything on hold. So now you've got this flurry of things that are coming through right now.
There's a lot of, I read an article by Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone. I don't know if you saw that or not, about the foreclosure process. In this case, it was in Florida, where they went to a court, and the banks in many cases did not have the proper documentation. There were allegations that they had hired employees simply to sign documents saying that, yeah, we're the lien holder on this particular house, but really no proof, and they're just trying to run these things through the court. And it was a very interesting article, and I would, it seemed to me prudent to anyone facing foreclosure to make sure you had a lawyer with you who was on top of this stuff, because there are I's to dot and T's to cross. So this has to be done legally, and it seemed that maybe in some cases that it wasn't. Is there any good news in a foreclosure? You would think that someone else's misfortune could be someone else's fortune, but I don't know.
Well, certainly. I mean, obviously, there's buys out there to be had right now.
Yeah.
And so anyone who is, especially a first-time home buyer, that is in a position where they know that their job is secure, they're going to be in the area for 3 to 4 years, it would be silly for them not to buy if they had all the things lined up right now and had a down payment.
Yeah.
A 3.5% down payment through FHA to be able to get into a home. But just don't overextend yourself. Obviously, that's where people got into this mess. But Florida was one of the states that had the lawsuits against it because of the mismanagement of the way that things were done.
Right.
Michigan has got a very set way as to how they do foreclosures. And so we didn't really see any of that, and there weren't any lawsuits here in Michigan that I'm aware of that were as a result of that.
Sure.
So we do have a much stricter set of guidelines, if you will, for the state of Michigan.
What was happening in Florida, it seemed that the loans had been sold from one lender to another lender to another lender, and along the way the paperwork gets mislaid or what have you. And it wasn't entirely clear that the letter of the law was being followed again. But that's as you say, that's in Florida, as I say, that's in Florida. We hear about crisis in places like Florida, Nevada, California. Where does Michigan rank in terms of the severity of the foreclosure problem?
Michigan is still right up there. We're in the top 10 still, obviously. But our job market now is, we're still doing, I don't want to say holding our own, but I'm starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see people, I believe that there's been a large pent-up demand in the Lansing area from what I see locally, as far as people wanting to get into the market and actually saying, enough of the doom and gloom. I need a roof over my head. And, now is the great time to buy, and so they're going out there and they're purchasing. We've put a lot more sales on the board since January 1st than we had in a lot of other years previous.
Right, and this has been going on since about 2008, right? The slump?
Well, I started noticing it in 2006.
Okay, wow.
Myself.
Yeah. Okay. The National Association of Realtors predicting that in 2011, existing home sales at any rate, will go up between 5 and 10%, and new home sales, new home starts at any rate, could go up by 20%. Yeah, that's good news, but you're starting from such a low position that that tempers the good news.
Right. The new home starts, the last time that it was lower was back in the 80s, and there were 600,000 new home starts. We're down around 280,000 new home starts right now. So, of course, a 10% jump is great, but it's still far away from where we were back in the 80s.
Right. And demand has got, just because of population growth, demand has to be greater than it was, say, 5 years ago. But again, with people unemployed, underemployed, what have you, it's hard to buy.
Well, people still need a place to live.
Well, yeah.
They're either going to pay rent,
Right.
which is typically more than what they would be purchasing for, or they're going to buy something.
Okay.
And the only way they can buy something right now is to be able to just do it prudently, get a good realtor, a good lender, and sit down and make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
There we go. Kim, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, Kim
Have a good day.
LaForest of Caldwell Banker Hubble Briarwood.
That is a mouthful.
It is indeed, and one apparently I'm not up to working on. But anyways, Kim, thanks very much. We'll take a break, and hey, Michael Patrick's going to be with us a few minutes after the top of the hour. Thanks to everybody watching on the TV side. We will continue with MPS in the morning right after this.